Most people will do the same exact thing and react in predictable ways, but expect something to change in their life. And Darwin had it really well when he said, it's not the strongest of species that survives or the most intelligent of species, but the one that's the most adaptable to change. And if you look around the world right now, whether you're looking at the economic model or the political model, or even certain aspects of the religious model, the environment, the medical model, there's several different parts of our culture that's beginning to collapse. And if you study human nature historically, we always wait for crisis or trauma or disease or diagnosis, both as an individual and as a culture, before we decide to change. And if you look at this and you study it in history, it's a sign that something new has to be born. So as the old model of reality begins to change, something else has to replace it. So we have two ways that we actually face crisis. We can either face crisis in a state of emergency, which in the beginning of a crisis is healthy, or we can face crisis in a state of creativity and innovation. So let's talk about that biologically, because it says a lot about how a culture responds, or a person individually. When you and I react to conditions in our life, stressful conditions, we turn on a very primitive nervous system called the fight or flight nervous system, or what's called the sympathetic nervous system. And when we react to our external environment and we see a chaos or a threat or a trauma, our primitive nervous system tells us that we either have two options. We either run or we fight. And we mobilize enormous amounts of energy because, from a historical standpoint, running and fighting from a predator was the best way for our chances of survival. So our stressors have become a little bit more complex. We have finances, we have jobs, we have traffic jams, we have internet connections, we have second mortgages, we have single parenting. And all of these elements turn on that primitive nervous system as if we're being chased by a lion. So in the short term, all organisms in nature can deal with short-term stress. A zebra gets chased by a lion, 15 minutes later it goes back to grazing and the stress is over. It returns back to homeostasis. Now, stress is when your body and brain are knocked out of balance. The stress response is what your body innately does to return itself back to order. So we know from a scientific standpoint that when you turn on the stress response and you can't turn it off, now you're headed for disease. Now you're headed for some type of breakdown. So if you look at a crisis in terms of emergency, and we're releasing all these primitive chemicals of adrenaline and cortisol, those chemicals create the emotional states of anger, of frustration, of aggression, of hatred, of fear, of anxiety, of insecurity, of hopelessness, of powerlessness, of guilt, of shame, of depression. The other state of mind, if you can view crisis as a great opportunity brilliantly disguised as an impossible situation, and you have to match the conditions in your environment with a new mind. Now we're talking about greatness, because innovation and creativity and a new way of thinking and a new way of being means that we can't do the same thing from the past. And so in history, Cultures that, or individuals that overcame their environmental conditions were considered mystics and saints and leaders and charismatic leaders. They were individuals that saw past the illusion of the present reality. Now, when we begin to become innovative or creative, the brain begins to switch. We begin to turn on the forebrain, the frontal lobe, which is really the crowning achievement of a human being, and we begin to ask bigger questions. How can we create a new way of being in a world that's falling apart? How can we begin to create a new system to adapt to these conditions? Now, the hardest part, without a doubt, in all of my research about change is not making the same choice as you did the day before. So reason this. You think 60 to 70,000 thoughts in one day. Out of those 60 to 70,000 thoughts that you think, 90% of those thoughts are the same thoughts as the day before. So the same thoughts will lead to the same choices. The same choices will lead to the same behaviors. The same behaviors will create the same experiences. The same experiences create the same emotions, and those same emotions drive the same thoughts, and that's called a personality. And your biology is a reflection of your state of being. So then your personality is directly related to your personal reality. And your personality is made up of how you think, how you act, and how you feel. So in order for you to create a new personal reality, a new life, then you have to begin to examine the thoughts that you're thinking and decide if you want to continue thinking that way or choose a new way of thinking. You have to become aware and observe your behaviors and look to see if those habits are something that's going to support a new future. And you have to look at the emotions that you've memorized that keep you connected to the past and decide if those emotions are healthy. So most people try to create a new personal reality as the same personality, and it doesn't work. We literally have to become somebody else. So it stands to reason then, as you begin to question and speculate possibilities, the Wright brothers, Madame Curie, Thomas Edison, Benjamin Franklin, Marconi, they were all thinking outside the box. They were asking questions. Is there a way to create this outcome? And when they began to think in new and unusual ways, new thoughts lead to new choices. New choices lead to new behaviors lead to new experiences create new emotions, and all of a sudden you start to transform. So, in order to change a culture, you have to change individuals. We have to change it individual by individual. Now, this requires then, by not making the same choices you did the day before, to begin to think and act in different ways. This is the creative function of human beings. So if an economy is collapsing, if a government is deceiving, if people are no longer feeling supported, then we have to think in uncommon ways in order to adapt to the environment. If we don't, then it is really the environment, the external world, that's controlling how we think and feel. We're victims. To the external world. Is it possible to change the way you think and feel and have some effect in your environment? Now, that is a concept that when people are struggling to survive, it becomes very difficult because you're still worried about the food on your table, you're still worried about the well-being of your children. But what's the alternative? I mean, there aren't many other alternatives. So then when we start asking unlimited questions like, what would be a great way to run a business in this changing world? How could I begin to influence my future? It requires one amazing thing, and that is gaining knowledge, gaining information. Every time you learn something new, you make a new connection in your brain. That's what learning is. And as you begin to think about new ways of being and you're learning new information, the brain begins to fire in new sequences and new patterns and new combinations. And whenever you make the brain work differently, you are changing your mind. Mind is the brain in action. So when we begin to get creative, something unusual happens. We stop living by those survival emotions. Those survival emotions alter our perception and cause us to look at the future through the lens of the past. As we begin to design a new way of being, we have to lay down the very thing that we used our whole life to get what we want for something greater to take over. Now we're talking about genius. Now we're talking about innovation. Now once the idea comes, the next step is that you have to take action. You have to do something with it.
I hope you enjoyed this amazing speech by Joe Dispenza. We'll continue with our daily challenge. Can you complete the inspiring quote and give us the right answer? If you can do it first, you're the daily winner. In the last video we were looking for 2 words, and the quote was Simon Sinek's, and it goes like this. The only 2 ways to influence human behavior. You can manipulate it or you can... The correct answer was inspire it. So there are only 2 ways to influence human behavior. You can manipulate it or you can inspire it. Congratulations to everyone with the correct answer and to everyone who tried but didn't guess. Today we have the quote that belongs to Joe Dispenza, and it goes like this. To be happy with yourself in the present moment while maintaining a dream of your future is a grand recipe for... So we are looking for 1 word only, and I'm sure you will know the right answer. Write your answer in the comments below the video. Even if you're not sure, try and guess. You might be winner of this challenge. If you love this video and find it helpful, give your thumbs up and share it with your friends. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that bell button so you don't miss my new videos and new challenges. So hit the bell button and you will get notification when new video is published. If you really like what we do here and want to support us, you can join our channel and our community for a symbolic fee and gain many other additional features. You can do that by clicking the join button next to the subscribe button. Or you can click on the link in the description of this video. Stay good and have a great day.